Hey everyone, Andrew here, and it's been a while since I've done a top 5. I mean, I did the end of the year top 5 like I usually do, and I've been wanting to do another one. And there's been a couple series where it's like there's just not quite enough into it to really break down and go through a top 5, because it's like there's only 9 in this series. Am I really going to do a top 5 worst and a top 5 best for that? So I decided I would start doing some ranking videos. And when I was considering what to do, I realized I had a golden opportunity because just this year we lost one of the great TV shows franchises, one of the great comic book renaissance series. We lost CW's The Arrowverse. I watched all of them. I really enjoyed most of them. I really wanted to talk about them, go over them a little bit. Now, which ones ended up on the list was a bit confusing because there are some shows that are considered part of the Arrowverse, some that are considered spin-offs, some that have very loose connections to it. There was a big event in the Arrowverse called the Crisis on Infinite Earths where they literally tied into literally every version of a live-action TV show that existed that was comic book based. So you saw Birds of Prey, you saw the Adam West Batman, you saw Titans, you saw, Doom Patrol, like literally everything fell under that. And it's like, how much of that do I count as part of the Arrowverse? And I'm like, let's just stick to the ones that are CW focused, clearly are connected to the Arrowverse, and at some point or in some way would tie into the whole universe. So I am definitely not counting CW's Gotham Knights as an Arrowverse show because it has no connections whatsoever. If I did, it would be the very bottom of this list. Without a doubt, legit one of the worst comic book shows ever made. Like, just bad. But yeah, honestly, my thoughts overall on the Arrowverse is I really enjoyed it. I thought there was some really good, really creative ideas. They had such a great casting choices and character use and ideas and action scenes and storytelling. The thing about the Arrowverse that was always great was the level of connectivity to it. You were always being introduced to new characters from different universes, different stories, and sometimes they would get their own spin-off show, and sometimes they would just show up in random episodes. And then they would do every year they would do like a big team up, everyone gets together and fights together episode, and all of those are exceptional. They made a big deal about this. We had like 4 big crossover events. First one was an invasion of these aliens, which was pretty fun. Second one, they went to the planet X, where all of the Nazis succeeded and now have superpowers, and there's evil versions of the good guys running around. You had a whole thing where like Flash and Arrow switched personalities and backstories and had to learn to work together. And then you had the be-all end-all, the Crisis on Infinite Earths. And my god, did they hit that out of the park. Warner Brothers can't even make a good Justice League film. Like, can't even figure out how to make a good starting point for a Justice League film, that the Arrowverse, this little CW idea, managed to make a compelling, interesting, creative, well-done version of Crisis on Infinite Earths is outstanding. Now, going over the series themselves and which was the worst to which one was the best, we have 9 entries. So starting out with number 9, Vixen and Freedom Fighter the Ray. Technically these could count as 2 separate things, but they're about the same level of quality, so I'm just going to shove them together. Both are web series that were made for the CW Seed. They are animated. They are like 4 episodes a season, and each episode is like 10 minutes or less. So there's really not much here. I mean, they had enough that they were able to shove them together and make them into films. But yeah, there's not a lot of interesting or creative stuff with this. Vixen follows the superhero who has the little medallion, who can summon the power of animals, and it's fine. The only thing interesting is that it has Stephen Amell and Grant Gustafson reprising their roles as Flash and Arrow, but unfortunately they are both very monotone, and it was clear that they were not well directed for this, because they just say everything very bored and like they're tired and just want to go home, and it just does not work. And then you have Freedom Fighter the Ray, which is about a gay superhero, being afraid to come out to his parents, which actually worked really well for that. But the story itself wasn't really interesting, and they had a point where it's like the Ray goes and fights like Nazi Supergirl, and he wins he wins a clean fight against Nazi Supergirl, which yeah, no, I don't buy that for a second. And then the funny thing with that is they had Flash and Arrow in them, but they aren't voiced by the original actors. Now they had actual professional voice actors do it, and they were only a smidge better. These are just kind of passable, I would say. The Vixen had more potential. The Ray had a little bit better production, but they're both pretty meh. Number 8, Batwoman. I had a hard time deciding which one was going to be the bottom of the live-action ones. It was between this one and the one right above it, of course. And I honestly, when I first made the list in my brain, I had the other one below this one. But Batwoman, because Batwoman had some really quality moments and good ideas and stuff in it that kind of worked. Like, the first season of Batwoman is actually fairly good. They had a great lead in Ruby Rose as Batwoman / Kate Kane. Had a really good solid to that. She had a really good rival nemesis in Rachel Skarstein's Alice. And basically she was Kate's twin sister who got kidnapped at a young age and they thought had died, and she'd been raised by this guy who warped her mind to make her think she was Alice from Alice in Wonderland. And now that she was free, she was going on a killing spree to kill all of the people that were connected to her dad, who did not, because he didn't rescue her. And Alice worked really well for the first 2 seasons. Unfortunately, she kept reappearing as the series went on, and it just stopped working the more she appeared. But then, unfortunately, after season 1, the show took a terrible nosedive because, for starters, they lost their lead actress. Ruby Rose had to quit because she had an allergic reaction to the suit, and it was giving her hives and a whole bunch of stuff, so she couldn't wear the Batwoman suit anymore, and so she quit. So she got replaced by Havika Leslie, and she played Ryan Wilder, this woman living out of her van who knew how to fight, but had been to juvie and was trying to get revenge for the person that killed her mom, who turned out was Alice. And she does a fine job. She's not the problem, really, but she doesn't have the same gravitas, and there's something always a little bit missing in her performance. It doesn't help that the show got more and more ridiculous and dumb as it kept going, to the point where it's like you get to the final arc of the thing, and it's like Ryan is fighting against her half-brother, and he'd been infected with Joker toxin and was now going crazy and planned to release Joker toxin on all of Gotham via the Bat blimp.
Your definition of fun is blowing up half of Gotham.
Whoa, why so pessimistic? That means half the island lives. To remember the day that the Bat blimp disfigured them beyond recognition and Batwoman didn't save them.
So Batwoman and her brother had to fight each other on the Bat blimp to keep this toxin from going out, and it just got so ridiculous and stupid.
That you're so desperate for a family that you believe you could save me.
Like, it was just such a sour note to end on for the whole thing. It was like, There is one other thing I want to point out, is you had the main love interest, that was Sophie Moore. And it made sense when she was into Kate, because they had this history, this, that, and the other. When Kate left, her new love interest became Ryan. Like, she didn't, like, she just fell in love with Batwoman again. It's such a lazy thing to do, of just have her have the same love interest again. Like, she just moved on to the other person behind the mask. I'm like, no, I think you're in love with Batwoman. I don't think you're in love with either of the people under the mask. Did not help that they had no chemistry whatsoever. All they did was really bicker, and not in a way that was fun. Yeah, it was a show that started out here and then just as it went. Like, ugh. And that was not intended to be the finale. They were supposed to get another season, but unfortunately CW got bought and all of these shows got canceled, except for one. And why that one gets to have multiple more seasons, I do not know, and we will talk about that shortly. But yeah, it's a series that started off well, had a good cast, and decent writing, but it had so many production problems and so many things go wrong, and it just spiraled down and down and down to the point that I can't really say it was actually a very good watch overall. I mean, I kind of sort of recommend the first season, but honestly, you can skip most of this and you'll be fine. Number 7, Black Lightning. Where Batwoman started off good and then slowly got worse and worse and worse to the point it became almost unwatchable, Black Lightning stayed at the exact same level throughout the whole thing, and that level was like, I wanted to put this to the bottom because I didn't really have super strong feelings on this show whatsoever. Like, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, it was just there. But the more I thought about it, it's like I can't really blame the show for being what it was. I really liked the concept, like the idea of this older superhero who had gone into retirement to protect his family so that he didn't get caught in the crossfire, then having to return to being a superhero to save his daughters from being kidnapped, and then just can't really stop doing it, now feels that he has to become the vigilante again all the time. It's really creative and really interesting, and it had a great lead in Cress Williams and a solid cast overall. We had another really good villain in this, Tobias Whale, played by Marvin Jones III, like this African-American albino with this immortality and this super strength and this just nearly impossible to kill kind of person. And like, Tobias was a really good antithesis for the first season, and then they just kept bringing him back. So much like Alice, like, the more they brought him back, the worse it got. Like, the fact that he became the final villain again for the final season was just like, really? Didn't we already kind of beat him? The show had some good ideas, had some great characters, but they never did a whole bunch with any of them. Like, they had this really interesting character who was this gangbanger who gained metahuman powers, and his was like, anyone he killed became a tattoo on his body, and they would haunt him as a ghost, but he can remember their things and inherit some of their skills, kind of. And it was a really great concept that they did some cool visuals with, but they never really did anything with the character.
Maybe you ain't built for this no more, man.
You always murder somebody. It's like how you killed me.
I didn't do nothing to you to give you a job. Everything after that you did to yourself.
Right.
And then you get to Black Lightning's daughters, who both develop metahuman powers. One has the ability to gain super strength if she holds her breath slightly. And so she became Thunder. How super strength has anything to do with thunder, I don't know. And then his younger daughter, who gained the ability to be a power amplifier. She basically could create energy and supercharge anyone that she wanted, became Lightning, as opposed to Black Lightning. And they were fairly annoying. Like, the younger one especially spent most of her time complaining. And there's a weird thing where it's like the show's final season happened right as we were going into lockdown and starting to do all the COVID stuff. And the actress playing the youngest daughter was like, I'm not coming back while this disease is out there. So they had to recast her with a different actress and came up with this whole story about how she flew into space and then absorbed all this energy, and it caused her to change into this new woman and look different but have all the same memories. And then right at the end of the series, the other actress is like, I want to come back. And they're like, sure. So they had the original daughter come back and fight the new daughter, saying she was a parasite who had kidnapped her and was trying to siphon her power. And they had a fight to the death, and the original daughter won. And it was just such a weird, stupid thing to happen, and I 100% understand why. Like, when you know that story, it makes way more sense because of the whole COVID stuff. But in universe, oh, that was weird and dumb. Like, just weird and dumb overall. Like, overall, my entire thoughts on the show was it was meh. Like, the lead were good, the cast was okay, but none of the stories really grabbed me in any way or did anything really interesting or creative with their stuff. Like, the music in the show was good. I will give that, if anything. But yeah, Black Lightning was not a great show overall. It was okay. Number 6. Superman and Lois. This is one of those ones where it's like, I wasn't 100% sure if it counts as part of the Arrowverse or not. Like, it falls under both, because the two actors playing Superman and Lois were the same actors who played Superman and Lois in Supergirl. But this is clearly taking place in a separate universe or a separate timeline, because there is never any mention of Supergirl. They make no references to anything in the Arrowverse whatsoever. And it's clear that it was just, they just decided to have it be its own spin-off thing. But it's still the same characters and the same actors, kind of, sort of, so I'm just going to count it. That said, the show has its ups, but it has a lot of downs. So, like, the two leads are great. They have really good chemistry. They work well off each other. It's like Superman and Lois felt like a natural sequel, follow-up to my favorite superhero show of all time, Lois and Clark: The Adventures of Superman. Felt like a really good kind of continuation of that, at least at first. But it has its flaws. So the entire story is basically like Lois and Clark realize that one of their kids has superpowers, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with it, so they move back into the Kent farm and start living in Smallville. And occasionally superhero-y things happen every once in a while. The show is also really grim and dark and kind of depressing. Like, the entire thing is shot gray. Like, it's just a really sad palette color, and it just does not work or is not extremely interesting at this and the other. Now, I am going to tell you right now, I have only seen the first 2 seasons. I started the first episode of season 3, but I haven't gone on to the second onward. I'm not 100% certain if I'm going to. I will still say the first 2 seasons of Superman and Lois are good, and they are definitely better than Black Lightning and Batwoman, but I can totally see this one moving down the list for me if I choose to continue and look at the later seasons, because I have a hard time believing I will care, because I just kind of don't. It does not help that the twin sons of Superman and Lois are the worst characters. All they do is complain. All they do is bitch and moan all the time. And like, one of them gets superpowers and the other one doesn't. And the one that gets superpowers just whines all the time. He gets a girlfriend, and like after a couple days he's like, I need to tell her I have superpowers. She needs to know. And I'm like, dude, you've known her for a week. You can tell her at some point. But how about you figure out if you're even going to ever use these powers first? Considering you don't seem to want to. Except when you do. It's just, he gets so whiny about it. Like, it has some good fight scenes and some good ideas. I liked, they brought in an idea that Superman had a half-brother who had been trained by his father to destroy the world, and the only thing that was keeping him from doing that was he wanted to actually have a relationship with his brother, and that was kind of cool. And they brought in a Bizarro Superman for season 2 that actually worked out really interestingly. It was a kind of cool idea. But I can totally see this sliding down the list super hard if season 3 and season 4, which is also weird because this is the only CW Arrowverse show that didn't get canceled right out. Like, everything else got cut down right there. Even shows that were actually super popular that a lot of people wanted to be invested in can't stopped before they got a finale. But this show, which has just been kind of the whole time, is getting a 4th season. Like, it has some really good fight scenes. When it chooses to be very superhero-y, it works really well. I really like grounding Superman and having him be like having to try to be a real normal person for the most part. But it has too much dourness to it, and it's just so whiny and depressing. Number 5, Stargirl. This is another one where it's like it's not 100% sure if it really fits into it or not, because the leads from this did show up in the Crisis of Infinite Earths, but it was only as showing an image of another universe that could exist, which again they did with a whole bunch of other shows, and I'm not counting them. I will say though, I do believe had the Arrowverse not started to die shortly after Stargirl started, that Stargirl would have eventually crossed over with them at some point in some way. Now, Stargirl overall is actually a pretty good, fun show. It's very much a teenager drama show. It's about a girl who gets, this magical staff and is like, I can be a superhero, and wants to do good and wants to do right things and has the plucky attitude that she can overcome anything type of thing. And then her having to slowly come to realize that the world isn't that easy and that life isn't going to work the way that she believes it will, but if she keeps up her positive attitude and keeps facing the situations head on, she can grow as a human being. Works extremely well in this one. I like that it focuses on the Justice Society of America versus the Injustice Society of America, and you have some really interesting dark questions where it's like, are these the bad guys, or are these good guys, or what's going on? It has some really creative episodes and some really creative ideas. I love the casting in this. Like, you have Amy Smart and Luke Wilson as the parents, and Luke Wilson does a really good job of being Pat Dugan, who controls a giant mech named Stripe that he uses to try to help protect his stepdaughter. They have a really good chemistry and a really good balance. It's like, he cares about her, he thinks of her almost as his own daughter, but he knows he's also the stepdad and has to deal with that. You had Joe McHale as Starman, which was actually really good. Like, he did an extremely good job as this character. Like, I expected him to do the whole thing goofy and stupid, and he does a really solid job as playing the older Starman character who's just, what Stargirl is trying to live up to in a sense. I really like the colorfulness of it and the energy and all that. It does have some flaws. Some of the effects in this are not as good as some of the other shows. The teenage drama gets a little overwhelming and can be a bit much for some of it. Some of the side characters can be a little bit annoying. Some really great ideas and really good characters in it. It just never really gets to fully grow and evolve and become anything because it's only 3 seasons long, so it got canceled. All 3 seasons are pretty good, but it is also one that you could kind of skip and you're not losing too much. I still would recommend it if you are a fan of superhero stories. It has some stuff in it that works really well. Number 4, Supergirl. Supergirl started out as a CBS show, and the first season of Supergirl on CBS is actually amazing. I truly recommend it. It is actually a lot of fun, really good. First few episodes are rough, but once you get to like episode 6 or 7, it starts really cooking really well. And even in the first season, it started to tie into the Arrowverse a little bit because you had Grant Gustison's Flash end up traveling dimensions. It ended up in Supergirl's dimension, but the show cost a lot to make for CBS, so CBS canceled it, and then it got picked up by the CW. And you can tell between season 1 and season 2 that there's a dramatic drop in quality. It is still good. It's not amazing, but it becomes a good show. It has some really good characters, a really good cast, really stellar fights and ideas and characters. I really truly do love some of the performances and some of the stuff in this. You have, Melissa Bonest as Kara / Supergirl, and she does a really good job of balancing being the serious character, but also being fun, but also being, having all of these troubles of being Supergirl, but also trying to be normal. One of the characters I really do have to point out that actually did an extremely, really good job with it was Katie McGrath as Lena Luthor, Lex Luthor's half-sister. And if you saw my review on BBC Merlin, I talked about her because she played Morgan Le Fay in that, and Lena Luthor is the better version of Morgan Le Fay. This character who wants to be good, but has the potential to be very evil, and sometimes can't see the line in between the two. Like, she does a great job of balancing that. I also really, really have to call out and praise John Cryer as Lex Luthor. Now, when I first heard that he got cast, and you first see him, I was very skeptical, because John Cryer is not an actor you take extremely seriously. Like, he played Lenny Luthor on Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Like, he played a character that was made to be made fun of. He's not a character known for being a smart genius with gravitas. And I will flat out say he is actually legit one of the best Lex Luthors I've ever seen. Like, he does a great job of being this very intelligent man who's also very selfish and very self-centered and an egomaniac, and can manipulate people and convince them that what they're doing is right, even though it's not actually the right thing to do. But he's also, cannot stand the hubris of Supergirl and Superman, and that think they're better than him, and his need to show the world that he is the hero and they are the villain. He does such a good job in this role. He is literally like one of the saving grace of the later seasons of the show.
Got her.
Oh. Looks like we have what we need. I'll take my leave. Last thing I had to do. You're still alive when your friends return. Remind them that I am always one step ahead. Your shameful little back alley meeting with Otis, I arranged that. See, I had to prevent your friends from understanding how important the little girl was until I got what I wanted. And as usual, I win.
I like the fact that we had the Dreamer, the first transgender superhero on TV, which was really cool and really nice thing, character to have. But they never really captured or figured out what to do with that character too much. I honestly will never forget the show for because the first season set up the idea that Supergirl and Jimmy Olsen could eventually become a couple because they had such good chemistry and such good level of that. And at the end of season 1, they decided that they are going to start dating. And before the end of episode 1 of season 2, before they'd even really gone on a first date, they break up and they never try again. And it's like, no, you spent a whole season building up that they could be a great couple, and then we never get to see it happen. Are you kidding me? I will never forgive CW for doing that. It's not like that the later seasons are bad, it's just that first season is just so exceptionally good that the rest just kind of fail in comparison. You can see the drop in even just video quality. And it's sad, because I own the first season, because I was like, this is such a great first season. I'm never going to want to be rid of it. And now I'm afraid to watch it, because the later seasons are so iffy that I'm not sure if it'll taint the first season for me. But yeah, I do highly recommend the show, especially that first season. Second season on, give it a try. There's definitely some great character stuff in it. It's just lacking a bit in the story and the effects department for me. Number 3, Legends of Tomorrow. Now, Legends of Tomorrow is kind of the opposite problem of what Supergirl has, in that the Legends of Tomorrow first season is really rough and hard to get into, but from season 2 on, it's amazing. It has really great stuff into it. The first season is all about this Time Master Rip Hunter going back in time to get superheroes to help him fight this immortal guy from destroying the world. And it spends so much of its time being dour and serious, and it really doesn't start to work until like the last 2 episodes of season 1. That said, the first season does have some exceptional fight scenes. Like, they have everyone fighting together in these big, like, Avengers-style group shots, and it just works so well and is so creative and interesting.
Can I burn some stuff now? I wish you would.
Shame that the storytelling was so bad in that first season. However, starting from season 2, Rip Hunter is gone, and now White Canary Sarah Lance has become the captain of the ship, and the show becomes full-on crazy, kooky, goofy, wonderful fun. Like, there's a point in like the end of the second season where they have to fight this demon, and they were like, okay, we need to band together and summon a creature to come fight for us.
Imagine a powerful light of pure goodness. Is somebody thinking of...
I'm sorry, you said think of something pure and I thought...
No, you didn't.
Again, I said I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about him either.
And they end up summoning this giant stuffed animal known as Bebo.
That is your captain's plan. Where the hell is Sarah and the others?
That is Sarah and the others.
What?
Who goes on a fighting spree and kicks the demon's butt, and it works stupidly well. It's so dumb, but it's so much fun. But there's just so much fun little creative stuff. You get characters who don't really get much of a lot of love in the shows that they started out with. Get a lot to do. Like, I loved having Sarah Lance as the lead. She worked really well as this character of an assassin who had to learn to become a hero, who had to learn to become a leader. And I like that she was like one of the very first like lesbian leads especially for like a superhero show, but it's just in general. So you had her love interest, who is Ava Shop, who turns out is a synthoid. Like, she's literally was made to be a service droid that followed orders. But this Ava is so different and has her own personality, and watching her interact with the Legends is just so fun. She's so used to being in control and having things figured out and being on time and this stuff, and they're so chaotic that she'll just be in the corner going, I can't do this, I can't do this. Like, it just works so well and makes me laugh every time. So much great stuff with that. You got to see villains from other Arrowverse shows show up, you know. You got to see characters that you would never expect to show up, and they became big, huge, important parts. John Constantine became a major character starting from season 4 on, and he does an extremely good job in it. That, of course, does lead me to the question of, do I count the NBC Constantine as part of the Arrowverse? And it's like, this is the one where I'm going to say no, because it was not intended necessarily to be part of the Arrowverse, and the character is very different from who he was in that show. That said, if I did include it, it would be right in between Superman and Stargirl, because it was a fun show, had good potential, but never really got to live up to it. And I'm glad that the character at least got to have more fun and more arcs and got to be this really great addition to this cast. The fighting does drop a little bit after season 1, but everything else skyrockets in quality, and it's really sad that the show just kind of stops. Like, they were supposed to get an 8th season, but unfortunately CW got bought out by another company, and they canceled all of the shows, again, except for Superman and Lois, which is getting a 4th season for some reason. But yeah, they just canceled this one flat out, even though they were already were greenlit for an 8th season. We're planning an 8th season, so yeah, it is sad for it to end on a kind of wet note, but it is still, like, overall a very solid, really good, really fun show that could go crazy, could change everything about itself, but still have its core intact. Number 2, Arrow. Now, you have to take into account when Arrow first came out, we did not have a lot of hope for it. I especially, I didn't know too much about Green Arrow. I remembered him from Justice League Unlimited, where he was an eco-fighter who Batman picked to keep the people more humanized. But, like, as far as a character goes, the best thing I knew about him was, like, he was just, like, kind of a cheaper version of Batman, which is how he's kind of shown. I mean, he's a rich orphan who started up crime into honor of his started fighting crime in honor of his parents, uses his special skills to get advantages, has a cave, all this stuff. It's like he does come off as that. And I knew a lot of people that were bringing up, like, how are we going to take this seriously? The last time we saw a live action Green Arrow, it was in Smallville, and his name was Green. He told everyone to call him Green, and that was just. And then right away we were all stunned in silence because of Stephen Amell's performance and gravitas and what he brought to that role. I love the story of how he got the part, which is, like, they were asking him about, like, his workout routines and everything, and he's like, oh yeah, I do this thing called the salmon board. And they're like, the what? And he showed them and described it, and then showed them doing it, which is this. He did that for them, and they immediately went, you're hired. like he got the part because he was a badass, and he lives up to that. He brought so much gravitas and character and arc to that thing. I loved what they chose to do with some of the stuff. They chose to give it a very serious, very solid, very downer tone in the beginning, and then lightened it up as it went on, as the character became lighter. Because when he first puts on the hood and starts becoming Arrow, he's an assassin at that point. He's killing every single person who is on the list of people that led to his dad's death. That is his only goal. And only through his interactions with Black Canary, Felicity Smoke, and Diggle, and all of his friends and all of his family does he learn how to become a hero and how to choose to defeat rather than murder. And it's such a great performance from him, and there's so much good side characters in it. I have to give some love to David Ramsey as John Diggle, who was Oliver's bodyguard, who ended up becoming his partner, who became this superhero known as Spartan. He was 100% created for the show, and he did such a great job that he is now a character in the comics. That doesn't happen very often. Like, especially with the live action shows. I don't know any other character that's from a live action show creation that became part of the comics. I know, like, Harley Quinn and Livewire became part of the comics, but they were from the cartoons. I don't know any of the other live action ones, but he did such a good job with that. I also truly love how they let the show kind of grow in its own way. Because you could tell at the start of the show that they really wanted it to be Oliver Queen and Laura Lance, the woman who would eventually become Black Canary. And that's how it is always in the comics, is those two together. But then they brought in this little side character called Felicity Smoke, played by Emily Rickards. And literally their first scene together is just popping with energy and chemistry that he never had with Black Canary.
Hi, I'm Oliver Queen.
Of course.
I'm having some trouble with my computer, and they told me that you were the person to come and see.
Because these look like bullet holes.
My coffee shop isn't a bad neighborhood.
Their energy and their chemistry just poof, right away. It was so obvious and so clear. And so they just kept asking her to come back. And then eventually, she becomes like not just a part of the show and a major character and the main love interest. She becomes the co-lead of the film. Later seasons, she is just as important as Oliver Queen is in the storytelling. And that was from just a small character that just happened to have really good chemistry with the lead. And I love the fact that they were willing to deviate from the source material. Because how many shows and how many things have we watched where the main couple have no chemistry whatsoever, but we have to follow them because they're the main couple? I also really just love the arc that they chose for Oliver Queen through all of it, through like being an assassin to trying to be a good guy to being a real hero, teaching other people how to be heroes, to becoming the mayor and trying to save the city through that way, then having to go to prison for a little bit, but then, you know, getting to the end and having to do this really big heroic thing and then coming back as something even more powerful and more different. Just works so well, and I was so happy to see the growth and use of that character. Any version of Green Arrow that comes out after this is just going to be a comparison to Stephen Amell's take on that character. It's a really great show. It has its ups and downs. It runs a little bit too long, but overall it's really the start of the Arrowverse. It's really the backbone of the Arrowverse. It's the mind behind it, and you can really see the start of something truly interesting and amazing from this show. Number 1, The Flash. Now, the Arrow is the mind, the body, the start of the Arrowverse. The Flash is the heart, and it's the thing that really gave it life and kept it going and made it this big a deal as it was, because The Flash was just such an amazing show overall in all of its stuff. Now, the cast is excellent for this, of course. The storytelling is great. Grant Gustin is just this excellent lead for this character. He just embodies the Flash and Barry Allen so much and works so well in the story. Like, this show has so many great qualities to it, but it also has a bunch of flaws that when I was going through this, I was able to list like a bunch, but like they're all not as bad as how good the overall thing is. Like, little problems were like the fact that they kept kind of reusing the same villain over and over and over again. Like, most of the Flash big villains, the overarching villains, are the same kind of character. They are another speedster, but evil. Season 1, it's Reverse Flash. Season 2, it's Zoom. Season 3, it's Salvatore, the god of speed. Season 6, it's Godspeed. And then you get down to Season 8, and it's literally all of those characters. Again.
Flash, flash, flash. You didn't think I was gonna miss how this all turns out, did ya?
We're going to slaughter your team and end your legacy forever. But seriously, you don't stand a chance in hell. Tonight, we change the future.
You couldn't come up with other villains for him to fight as an overarching arc. Like, you could have done something, like, because they did a lot of really good villains as small characters in this. Like, you had King Cold, you had Heat Wave, you had King Shark showed up and was really cool. You had Gorilla Grodd as one of the big villains, and he worked so well, despite the fact that, you know, it's a TV show that didn't necessarily have the budget to make a really good Gorilla Grodd thing. And they also had a really bad habit, and this is true of the entire Arrowverse thing, but they had a really bad habit, especially in this show, of introducing characters with interesting abilities and interesting powers, and then they just disappeared. And you might get a quick mention, but then they are never seen again. It's like we got Jesse Quick, who was in half of a season. You got Kid Flash, who left for one season to go become a monk, and then occasionally would reappear for no reason. You had Ralph Dibny as Elongated Man. He, like, just disappeared, like, after season 6. It was weird. All of them just disappear, and they're never really mentioned or talked about, and it's just always like, okay. But there's also a lot of really great characters and a really great study and really good things about the show. Like I said, you have a great person playing Barry Allen. I also got to give a lot of love to the person playing his dad. Brought in the actor who played the Flash in the original 1990 Flash TV show to play Barry Allen's dad. But then they also had him play a version of another Flash known as Jay Garrick. And then they also had him play the Flash that he was from the 1990 show. And it was really cool if you're a fan of that old show, because they actually gave it a finale and an ending and wrapped that old show up in a way that it never got to before. But my favorite actor in the show, one of my favorite actors ever, is Tom Caravan. He's a Canadian actor. He played Harrison Wells and also Eobard Thawne. And they've met so many variations of Harrison Wells. Like, every season he got to play like 2 or 3 different variants of this character with different interests and different ways of speaking and different this, that, and the other. And it was always interesting and always great. I mean, granted, there was a point where you were kind of like, you don't have to keep coming back for this, but I was always happy to see that actor. Like, he just brought a lot of heart and chemistry to that show. I also just like how it tied into all of the other shows. Like, every other show some way came into Flash and had something to do with the Flash. Arrow, every once in a while that would happen, but like so many characters would just pop up again and again and again on the Flash. Like, the show had such great heart to it. It did lead to it being a bit of a melodrama, because like every couple episodes would be Barry just standing in a room going, I don't know what to do, and having have this big heart-to-heart about how you are you're amazing, you're the Flash, you just have to trust yourself and do the right thing. It got very dramatic, but you could feel the intention and the heart behind it. And it made up with it by having great fight sequences, really good effects for a TV show. Like, legitimately, the effects in this TV show are better than they were in the most recent Flash film. And I'm actually fairly forgiving of the 2023 Flash's effects, especially like the Dream Dome thing, because I know what they were going for to a little extent, but they did not even hold a candle to how good this show's effects were. It is a show that had such great heart and great life to it. It truly deserves to be remembered as the Arrowverse at its best. But that is just my opinion. What do you all think? Do you like these shows? Did you hate some of these shows? Do you think some of the ones that I put higher deserve to be lower, vice versa? Do you think shows that I didn't count should have been included, like freaking Gotham Knights? Let me know, because I do think that this series, this franchise, this television phenomenon had a positive effect on it. I think more people know about these characters, more people care about these characters, more people are invested in DC because of the Arrowverse. And I think that this is a better representation of what the DC universe can be over anything that the DCEU did. Except maybe Wonder Woman. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you all think. Happy watching, happy reading, and I will see you all next time. Bye!